Hi, everybody. Mike Larson here from Criminology Departments.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Ma. I'm also from criminology.
And today we just wanted to create a short video to help our colleagues and students work through a conversation about Chat GPT and generative AI, artificial intelligence, when it comes to learning in a criminology classroom. And so we decided that the easiest way to do this would be to break this into a couple of questions, some specific questions to guide a conversation. We intend to keep this nice and short, and we really encourage everyone to kind of fill in the blanks and talk about these issues collaboratively. So without further ado.
Yeah, and we're hoping that this conversation helps jumpstart the conversation in your classroom.
That's right. So our first question, and I'll pose this to Mike here, is what exactly are we talking about? What is Chat GPT and what is generative AI?
Yeah, so it's very simply, Chat GPT is a chatbot. That's not a new invention. There's been chatbots for a decade. Things that you can type into a screen and then it has a conversation with you. What's different is that this chatbot is much more powerful than any other previous chatbot because it's designed to hold a very, very natural conversation with you. It's supposed to actually be human, but behind that, behind the curtain, behind the screen, it also has access to something that other chatbots never had access to before. It has access basically to the entire internet that it scraped in its pre-training. So it has access to, if I'm not mistaken, 570 gigabytes of text, right? So it's read basically every book that's available on the internet and every other kind of document. So it's very, very smart. And that's why we refer to it as an artificial intelligence, an AI. We can debate what that is, but I think for our purposes, it's extremely smart because it's able to have perfect memory and recall to everything that it's ever seen before. And that's why it can't just run on your laptop. It's run on these kind of supercomputers offsite. And so it's able to have a conversation with you and you can ask it anything. And it will try its best to be able to respond and to answer your query. You might ask it, who is Plato? And it will tell you who that is. And then you say, you might be able to ask it in a conversational manner. Tell me more about him. What did he do? Why is he important? And it will be able to tell you all of that in natural language. So that's what ChatGPT is.
And it does this, to add on, it does this by predicting the most logical responses to your queries based on its review of its massive database of material. So it's a predictive intelligence in a way. It may actually not know what it's talking about. And again, that's more of a philosophical debate about, the nature of knowledge and understanding, but it definitely knows how this question or this kind of prompt would most likely be responded to based on the vast human data that it has access to. So that's a bit about what ChatGPT is. And I think we can also say that increasingly this technology and technologies like it are becoming integrated into the software that we are familiar with, right? So many of the programs that we've been using for years are starting to incorporate and will in the future incorporate more functions along these lines using the same kind of prompts, which gives rise to lots of questions about what should we do? So that brings me to my second question. Can GPT be used to assist students in university courses? Can ChatGPT in some way help students with what they're doing or provide some service? And I think we can break that down. That's a big question, right? So, I mean, Mike, do you think, can GPT be used to assist with learning?
Absolutely, 100% yes, because you can ask it to be your private tutor. You can ask it to be your assistant or an executive assistant. You can ask it to create an outline for an essay. You can ask it to test you on material. You would be able to say, copy whatever material you're studying, paste it into the machine, ask it to give you a test. You can ask it to help you study. You can ask it to review something or for it to expand on something. You can ask it to clarify something that you don't fully understand. You can so on and so forth. Right? You can ask it to do many, many things. So would be similar to having the instructor or TA or whatever, or an assistant or a very smart student in the class with you, beside you as you're reading something. So that is incredibly powerful. Why would you not want to have the smartest person or a very smart neighbor helping you looking over your shoulder, helping you study whatever you're studying. That's very useful. It can assist you, yes.
Yes. Right. And I think that's an important starting point, right? That there is utility to this, that people are looking to explore this for a good reason. But that's and I want to make this distinction. You've mentioned it's useful for learning, but can GPT also be used to simply produce content that can be then submitted for assignments? And I think there's a distinction between helping me understand some material and learn some material versus, can we get GPT to write a paper for us or prepare an assignment for submission? Can it do that?
Yeah, I mean, and you're asking a leading question. I think the students and the instructors who are watching this right now already know the answer. Absolutely, it can be used to produce content for an assignment. You can ask it to write an essay. Absolutely. You can ask it to produce, if you will, an assignment, whatever that might be. But of course, your mileage may vary. It depends how well you're able to craft that prompt or ask that question, the way in which you're able to, if you will, guide the machine to produce, the right output that you want. That's sometimes difficult. So sometimes it can be more trouble than it's worth to ask it to assist you. But yes, I think the short answer would be yes, of course. Everyone knows that it's very powerful and it's very good at creating text for you if you wanted to create text for you. Yeah.
Right. And good at authenticity too. I think we should mention, you can ask ChatGPT to write from a perspective that you give it, in a voice that you give it. You can present it. We present it with content and ask it to produce additional content in the same style or in the same tone. So it has that capacity to be used to produce a lot of different kinds of work, which is, I think, one of the reasons that it's causing so much consternation and trouble in post-secondary learning, where a lot of our role is assessing authenticity in terms of students' work. So that brings us then from the, can it do this, to the other question, is it permissible? Are we allowed to use GPT for learning or content production? And that's going to come up, right? That will come up, I think, in every single course that every student will take and every faculty member will teach for the foreseeable future. And the answer is changing. But how would we respond? Can we do this?
I think there's no clear answer to whether it's permitted or not permitted. Right now, in terms of our university policies, it's in flux. These are the early days. And I think even our university at KPU, they're trying to figure out what is permitted and what's not permitted. Right now, there are many universities across the world who are prohibiting its use, and then other universities who are actually leveraging it and saying you must use it for assignments. I can imagine, for example, in computer science, there are many courses where GitHub Copilot and other types of generative AI is now being prescribed as one of the tools that you must use for your assignment. But we're not there yet in the context of KPU. So I think without giving the wrong answer, I think that the only answer that we can give right now is we don't know if it's permitted or not permitted. Certainly, if your instructor tells you it's not permitted, then that would be, I think, the rule for your course. But right now, there's no, university-wide answer to that question. So I know that might not be satisfying, but it depends on your class and your instructor.
Mm-hmm. And I think we can go a bit further and say that there are resources that people should be referring to, faculty and students. And I think students have, I would go so far as to say, a responsibility to clarify this at the outset of a course. The university does have a page of guidelines for artificial intelligence and GPT. As you say, that's evolving, right? And will continue to do so. And there's also resources for, proper attribution and citation, right? Because just because we have artificial intelligence doesn't mean we're absolved of the responsibility of citing our sources and showing where our ideas are coming from. And so there's resources for that too. And then finally, there are the classroom level policies, right? Where someone says, this is the hard line for this course. You can use it for this. You may use it for that. You must not use it for this. And that should be clarified. It should be part of an opening discussion. Hopefully something that's actually, in a reference document that can be referred to. So that's not the most satisfactory answer, but we are in this period, right? We're in the early period of change, of very large scale change for this. So we wouldn't expect this to be kind of ossified in a formal policy just yet. But maybe we can skip the policy level and maybe talk more about norms. Should people who are learning at a university be using and engaging with ChatGPT in their studies? We know it can be useful. We know it can be permissible or not, depending. But should it be used?
Yes, I mean, it's in a sense, it's a performance enhancing drug. Let's look at it that way. It can help you, absolutely. But then you can also come to rely on it for your performance entirely. That's, of course, the main problem. The problem is really, if you want to use the analogy of performance enhancement, it could become an addiction, right? In fact, that you can't do without it. So should students use generative AI in their studies? I don't know. I think that's a very difficult question. As I've said already, it's very powerful. It's like having a very smart person right next to you, helping you, maybe actually even asking questions that you couldn't think about, and then clarifying things that you don't understand. That's an amazing thing to have, right? To have someone to help you, to tutor you, to guide you, and to support you even. But it's a problem if you then cannot do any of your work without that assistance.
Right.
I think that is the problem.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, I'm glad that you used the metaphor, right? The performance enhancing drug, because I think it is tempting for us to reach to metaphors, even though this is in some ways unprecedented in terms of the way it's changing our relationship.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah. It is kind of a real paradigm shift in the truest sense. But I want to use the metaphor myself of the difference between learning at university, coming to university to learn how to make a cabinet, let's say, or to make some piece of furniture, right? You're learning the craft, trial and error, right? You're going to get it wrong, but you're going to learn what kind of woods to use, what kind of tools to use, how to finish things, how to make sure things are measured properly, right? Measure twice, cut once, all that kind of stuff, the trial and error. And then I think also the joy and the kind of the creativity that comes with learning a craft. And we can imagine that learning any discipline, criminology, for example, can be analogous to learning a craft. And the GPT equivalent of that might be the distinction between making a cabinet or just buying one from IKEA and then having very, very simple instructions to put it together. Bam, you have a cabinet, right? And I think GPT allows us to do this for things like written assignments, right? I need to write an essay on something. Okay, there you go. It's the IKEA equivalent. You quickly assemble and take a look at it. Yeah, it looks like it's good. It's even easier with GPT because you can ask it to write the essay 5 different ways and 5 different times and then pick the one you like the best. But you're not learning anything really through that process. And therefore, I think you're missing out on that kind of craft knowledge. And that's something I think that we want to learn at university. Hopefully that we're here to learn a craft. We're here to learn, how to do something. And perhaps that's a little bit optimistic, right? That people would kind of cleave to that notion of I want to develop and grow my own capacities. And I want to avoid using something as a proxy for that. But I think there's also the issue is that if you finish a university degree, having used something like GPT to produce all of the content for assignments, then you yourself are essentially replaceable by GPT. You've actually demonstrated that. There's nothing that you're bringing or capable of doing that can't be done effectively by artificial intelligence. And that's very dangerous, right? Because we're going into a world where increasingly, I think from kind of a political sense, and a structural sense, there is going to be competition. We are going to see people trying to use artificial intelligence in lieu of human capacity for doing lots of different roles and responsibilities. And I think we want to inoculate ourselves against that kind of replaceability. And so for that reason, I think we should be wary of the temptation, and it really is a temptation to use this technology in lieu of our own work.
Yeah, I think your analogy of it being a craft is important. Yeah. Do you want to just buy something off the shelf, or do you want to learn how to make it? I think that's very precise. I think we want students to learn how to make things themselves, as opposed to having to buy something off the shelf. Yeah.
And hopefully to enjoy making things, right? Because we can all, I mean, I have IKEA furniture in my office here, and so that's fine, right? But I'm not studying to learn how to make IKEA furniture, nor am I trying to teach students how to make IKEA furniture. I'm trying to teach them how to make a cabinet, and hopefully they're here to learn that. Okay, so I think it's a good overview, a good starting point for conversation. I think what we've tried to do is seed a discussion that can be had by you who's watching this, and to discuss, the limits, the usefulness, and maybe the boundaries that you want to have for the use of GPT. Thanks,
Thanks
Mike.
for the conversation, Mike. And I hope that people watching this get something out of it and can begin their conversation themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks.